Hello, my friends. I feel compelled today to keep addressing this issue of climate change, climate crisis, and the human contribution to it. I've posted two videos, and I have had a huge turbulent response on my feed. Many very angry at me and calling me a shill, sold out to the elitists, flies private planes, and is joining the woke club, etc. First of all, your opinions count. Many of you have also said you're going to stop following me, and I honestly mean it. I will miss you once you stop following me because I value your perspective, including how violently you disagree with me, or what you think of me. Just to clarify, I haven't been bought over by anybody, no special interest groups. I do not travel on private planes. I mostly take the subway in New York. Actually, I mostly walk and then I take the subway. But if I'm in a hurry, I will take the Uber. As I mentioned, do not fly private planes. I do travel a lot, contributing to, all the things we're talking about. So your opinions are important, but I am not emotionally, at least, affected by them. Intellectually, yes, I want to see your perspective. Similarly, if you agree with me and you start flattering me on this feed, then it does not affect me emotionally, although intellectually, I understand that you and I may have the same perspective. So, climate change is a conversation that is eliciting a lot of turbulence right now, a lot of disagreement. It's like most human endeavors. When we have an opinion, there are bound to be people who disagree with us. And violent disagreements occur these days over climate change, over politics, over organized religion, and over natural therapies, reductionist therapies, vaccines, all of that. And anytime I've brought up these issues, I have experienced turbulence on my feed. But having said that, I thought I would address climate change again, this time from a solution-oriented perspective. I've given you all the reasons why I believe that humans have contributed to climate change. And it's happened since the Industrial Revolution. Most of us, no, all of us were born way after the Industrial Revolution. And it has only progressed, even with the technologies we have, like information technology, using the internet. It has actually only increased the human contribution to pollution. That's all we can call it, pollution of the biosphere. And remember that our physical body is also part of the biosphere. So I do believe that many of you have said also on my feed that industrial meat production is a huge contributor, and I didn't mention it, and I apologize. Industrial meat production is a huge contributor, and to what are called greenhouse gases. And many of you also said something else right now, I forget, but never mind. The scientific data proves that there is huge human contribution to climate change. Yes, the other thing I was trying to remember is many of you said climate has always changed. True. But and in fact, previous extinctions have resulted in climate change as well. The last extinction, 65 million years ago, due to a meteorite hitting our planet, caused the extinction of dinosaurs, huge climate change, and ultimately the evolution of the human species as well. Was it good or bad? Well, whatever it was, we happen to be here because of it. So I have been following the conversation on climate mitigation and adaptation, and following some of the literature coming from various sources, including the World Resources Institute. Many of you have also criticized my sources of information, so be it. But, I have the sources that I'm drawn to, and that may be a bias as well. But let me share with you some ideas from World Resources Institute on the topic of climate resilience. I'm going to read directly from my notes. So, climate actions have often fallen into one of two strategies: mitigation efforts to lower or remove greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere, and adaptation efforts to adjust systems and societies to withstand the impacts of climate change. The separation has led to the misinformed view that addressing climate change means pursuing either mitigation or adaptation. Just adjusting the screen a little bit. Okay. This divide is counterproductive and dangerous, especially for coastal villages, farmers, small island nations, and other communities at the front lines of climate impacts. The reality is that adaptation and mitigation are two sides of the same coin. In fact, methods and technologies that both curb climate change and cope with its impacts already exist. It is not always possible or practical to work solely on actions that are both adaptive and mitigating, nor are these actions a silver bullet to solve the climate crisis. Simply put, where they make sense, governments and communities should pursue such actions. Below are 5 solutions that can both curb climate change and help us cope with its impacts at the same time. Number 1, protect coastal wetlands. Salt marshes, mangroves, and seagrasses are unique coastal ecosystems that serve as natural filtration systems and marine habitats. They defend coasts against sea level rise by buffering storm surges and floodwaters, and store tons of carbon in their roots and soils. Mangrove forests currently hold the equivalent of more than 2 years of global emissions, which would be released into the atmosphere and worsen the effects of climate change if these forests were destroyed. Increasing protected coastal wetlands and recovering about 40% of the ecosystem's global coverage by 2050 could mitigate 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide per year over 3 years of emissions. Efforts to maintain coastal wetlands must include local communities that rely on these ecosystems for their homes and livelihoods. Countries like Fiji and Papua New Guinea have successful experiences around community-based conservation and education to manage these wetlands and support the development of surrounding communities. 2, promote the benefits of sustainable agroforestry, with land use changes from forestry and agriculture accounting for nearly 25% of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. It's clear that current land management schemes need to change. Agroforestry practices integrate diverse trees or shrubs with crops and livestock. In particular, pastures with trees can sequester 5 to 10 times more carbon than treeless areas of the same size. Farmers can also be more productive by growing crops and raising livestock simultaneously, using significantly less land. Diversifying crops and including livestock in these lands can give farmers additional sources of income and reduce the risk to livelihoods caused by climate change and unpredictable weather. Expanding the use of this method to 554 million acres globally, estimated to require an investment of 41.6 billion, could help farmers realize 699 billion in financial gains from revenue diversification. And there are references to all this data. 3. Decentralized energy distribution. Climate variability will negatively impact countries' electricity transmissions and distribution infrastructure. At the same time, development and population growth are increasing energy demand and usage. Centralized energy systems with large power plants and infrastructure connected over long distances are more vulnerable to climate change, since disruptions at one point in the system can affect the entire network. Decentralized systems, often powered by renewable energy with shorter transmission lines and smaller distribution areas, are more climate resilient. In the event of a disaster, a community with its own decentralized supply isn't affected by power outages in other areas. Smaller, more manageable power sources can also recover from disasters more rapidly. Low carbon technologies such as solar panels and batteries can also provide reliable, clean energy to critical services like hospitals in remote areas that aren't already connected to the grid or experience frequent power outages. 4. Secure indigenous peoples' land rights. Indigenous and local communities manage almost 50% of land on the planet, which up to 2.5 billion people depend on for their livelihoods. These communities have practiced adaptation principles on their lands over generations, developing a deep body of traditional knowledge that can help others understand how to adapt to changing environment. What's more, places where indigenous people have legal rights to their land have at least 2 times lower deforestation rates than similar areas without secure tenure, as seen in Bolivia, Brazil, and Colombia. Indigenous people and local communities have protected forests that hold a quarter of all above ground carbon in tropical forests. Yet these communities legally own less than 1/5 of this land. Securing indigenous people's rights will ensure that they can hold on to their land, protect natural resources, and better sustain their livelihoods in the face of climate change. 5. Improve mass transit. Road transport accounts for 72% of global transportation related emissions, a percentage of which will continue to grow unless more low carbon transportation options become available and accessible. Transportation infrastructure is also extremely vulnerable to climate change impacts like storms and extreme heat. Disruptions to the network due to extreme weather will disproportionately affect low-income people and other vulnerable urban populations who have fewer mobility options. Resilient low-carbon mass transit addresses both challenges. Expanding urban public transportation by 40% by 2050 could decrease the projected number of cars on the road and avoid 6.6 gigatons of carbon emissions. Retrofitting and designing mass transit to withstand climate risks such as natural disasters, sea level rise, or extreme heat ensures these transport options are safe and reliable in the long term. These improvements can influence usage and better accommodate future growth. Cities like Rome and Buenos Aires have integrated additional adaptation measures like heat-proofing buses and greening stops and routes to improve the commute experience. Increased public transportation also has the added benefits of relieving traffic congestion, reducing accidents and fatalities, and improving air quality. Prioritizing climate solutions that multitask. These are just some examples of climate actions that address both adaptation and mitigation simultaneously. Many others exist and accommodate different sectors, ecosystems, countries, and communities. The climate crisis is urgent and massive. Given limited funding, resources, and attention that can be allocated to solving it, policymakers need to prioritize such integrated efforts. Okay, so much for my notes. So, first thing is we have the data, we have the information, we have the knowledge. Now we need the wisdom to make it happen. And that wisdom is not going to come if we fight with each other. It's important to share our opinions, but let's stop attacking each other and calling each other names, whatever they mean, woke and sold out, leftist, elitist, this, that, the other. Let's go beyond that. Wisdom is how can we use knowledge to heal ourselves and our planet. And that wisdom can only come from a spiritual perspective or consciousness perspective. All these technologies are available to us, but unless we have a shift emotionally and spiritually in our relationship with what we call the environment, nothing is going to happen. Okay, so in wisdom traditions, everywhere, the earth has been called mother. Today we have a word for it, Gaia. She's a living organism. She is our mother. The earth recycles as our body. The trees are our lungs. If they didn't breathe, we wouldn't breathe. If we didn't breathe, they wouldn't breathe. As I've said before, put a rabbit in a vacuum, it dies. Put a plant in a vacuum, it dies. Put them both together and they both thrive. So those trees are lungs. The earth is recycling as our body. The oceans and rivers are our circulation. This air is our breath. And the stars give us the atoms that are circulating in our body. We are stardust beings with self-awareness, or at least trying to get there. So the shift is get rid of this word environment. We have a personal body, we have a universal body, and they're both equally ours. The I that I am is both this and the universe. And unless I feel that emotionally with reverence, there's not going to be change. Only reverence for our mother and that which gives us this life will effectively bring about climate reversal. Okay, as a last note, I remember a lot of people were saying, oh, India and China are the worst polluters. And that's true. Now, in India, you can't even breathe these days because of climate change. And they are, worst polluters. But so is the West, and so is the weapons industry, and so is all the technology that we have. Now, it took science to create the technology that is causing all this destruction. And now it is taking science again to solve these problems. This is part of the insanity of being human. We fight wars knowing that's not a solution. We pollute our mother and not recognizing that's polluting ourselves. And we have no reverence for life. And unless we have reverence for existence, there's not going to be a shift. Okay, my friends, so this is my feedback today. And I know some of you will be in violent disagreement with whatever I've said. And some of you will agree with what I've said. Just know I don't take it personally or emotionally anyway. And one of the reasons is I'm slowly trying to not identify with this entity called Deepak Chopra, because this is just a momentary process in the bigger I am. And to be constantly triggered by people and circumstance into predictable outcomes of behavior is living like a biological robot, where you're flattered by everybody who says good things to you and offended for the rest of your life if somebody says one thing mean to you. So that is no way to live. It's no way to live. to be at the mercy of every stranger you meet on the street. And these days, every stranger you meet on your feed, on the internet, and on social media. God bless and be happy and be at peace.